Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty RoundTable Radio Talk Show.
Happy to have you along, my fellow Americans. We're talking symbolic pardons. What the heck are they? Donald signs an executive order that I got a problem with. Thomas Massey's got a bill to withdraw. Garcia gets free. Trump and J.D. Vance conducting a big old economic tour. Even though, just so you understand, calling affordability issues out is nothing but a hoax. Trump admin pulls 9,500 truck drivers off the road. We're talking about it all. Happy to have you along, my fellow Americans, promoting God, family, and country, protecting life, liberty, and property. That's who we are. That's what we do in the traditions of our founding fathers. Yes, indeed, we reject revolution. Unless it's a Jesus revolution, then we're in because we follow the Prince of Peace. And I might add, it's a freedom-loving, faith-filled, fantastic. We're taking America back. One heart, one mind, one issue at a time Friday. That means the good doctor's in the house. Dr. Scott Bradley, freedomsrisingsun.com, his website for his incredible collegiate series on To Preserve the Nation. Not to mention his weekly webinars, Q&As on the Constitution, 7 p.m. Mountain Time every Thursday evening. Check it out. Get your ticket at freedomsrisingsun.com. Doctor, welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Sam. We're back again well, it's not quite the end of your week, but many people are going to call it a weekend.
You're supposed to work 6 days a week, sir. That's what the Lord told us to do.
You don't know about all of the stuff you got to do to get your lawn, your grass, your leaves, your snow, all of that kind of stuff that happens on Saturday. That's work, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Just because you're not making money doesn't mean you're not working, Sam.
Well, that's right. But some people don't work. They think it's just a beer bus party from Friday to Monday morning, you know?
That's true.
I'm off the beer bus from Friday to Monday morning. Now, I'm okay if you want to say I got to do some work around the house, and I got a honey-do list, and I'm working on my garden, and I'm out and about doing things. And, I think it's by the sweat of our brow and by our brains and our hard work and a little bit of fear, a little bit of, fear of failing, a little bit of motivation there to help us help the, people work hard and recognize the fruits of our labors and all that kind. It's a good thing, folks. I'll tell you what. Hey, Dr. Bradley, by the way, have you ever heard of a symbolic pardon? Well, President Trump just issued a symbolic pardon for Tina Peters. She remains in prison on state charges. They say related to election tampering. Now, I think that's a misrepresentation, but that's the headline. Peters, a former Republican county clerk from Colorado, they say she allowed unauthorized access to voting systems and data. And so she's serving a 9-year sentence over that. Trump's presidential pardon, his powers don't include or extend to state convictions. And so Peters will stay in prison, they say. This was announced after a federal magistrate judge on December the 8th denied Peters a request for release while she appeals her 2024 state conviction or state charges or whatever. I don't even know how to respond to this. I don't know. A symbolic pardon? I guess it shows the president's intent. I guess it's good news because she deserves it. But the only reason I say I guess is I'm not really sure what a symbolic pardon means. Doctor?
Well, I'm pretty confident I'm not going to be able to untangle this Gordian knot about the feds and the state guys and imprisoning. And, she, I think, was looking for election integrity. And what she got was a bunch of, bureaucratic and socialistic tyrants that were pushing her head underwater, it seems like. I don't know what a symbolic pardon, I guess at the federal level, it's not symbolic. I guess it's a real pardon, but at the state level, she's still incarcerated. I guess that's, man, life's 9 years too. I don't think her health is doing too good, is it? That seems like that's the last thing I heard.
No, her health is doing horrible. And, I have a problem when they say related to election tampering, because one of the things that, in my opinion, needs to happen here is when you talk about fully informed juries or whatever else, I don't think that Richard Mack was there and he gave me kind of the details of what happened in court and everything else. And, that Tina wasn't allowed to present her information. They weren't allowed to talk about what she had found in the discovery of the election machines. They just kind of roped it into, hey, she let people see the data and the machines that shouldn't have. And she, did this and did that and it was illegal. And I don't really believe or accept what we're hearing from the judge. And when you basically manipulate what the jury could see, and then you tell the jury, hey, it's about this, when it's really about that, they say she allowed unauthorized access to the secure voting system data analytics. But see, I don't buy that. I agree she's serving a 9-year sentence, but I don't think that's what she did at all. Her intent as a county clerk, the one in charge of the records, was to preserve the data and show how it was manipulated. But she never even got that chance, Doctor.
Well, that's part of the problem, is that it seems like a great many of the people nowadays that have access to these things are the very ones that should not have access because they're the manipulators. And so, it just seemed like it was a step to try and assure, and if we lose our voting, really that's kind of the last straw before, some violent action could occur. I mean, people expect to be able to have integrity in elections, and we just simply have lost it, it seems like. And the Colorado officials seem absolutely bent on, skewing everything that way. All too often, this is the way courts are run nowadays. And as we've talked many times, the court system, the judicial system that was established by the American founding fathers, was biased towards the accused. They would far rather have a guilty person go free than have an innocent person go to jail.
Well, and this is the point, whether she did what they claim she did or not, based on the jot and tittle of the law or whatever you want to say. Her intention was to preserve data and provide integrity for her county. Isn't that what the county clerk or the records keeping person should be doing, Doctor? I mean, it just seems like it's turned on its head.
It would seem that would be right up at the very top of the list. I mean, and that's part of the problem in Utah. We have an even more weird system in that the vice president of the state, if you will, the lieutenant governor, is the one that oversees the elections, has control over those things. And the governor and the lieutenant governor run as a ticket. It's like Kamala and Biden running on the same ticket. And if they were running and the vice president was the one that had all the levers to pull that made sure that they could protect whatever shenanigans they were doing, it's a really screwy system.
Yeah, we got a conflict of interest like nobody's business, folks. It's tragic. And our prayers are with Tina because she does have some struggling health due to the treatment that she's received in prison. They haven't been kind or fair to her in any way. And I just think, you have rapists and murderers get out in less time than they've given poor Tina Peters. Basically, the judge showed his malice in the case. And this is where I think that Donald Trump needs to basically launch an investigation into this and say, hey, wait a minute, there was fraud on the court. I mean, the judge literally said that she wasn't a patriot, that she was virtually, I don't have the right words in front of me, but that she was evil and a bad person. And the judge just went off. And so one of the things that they've done now is they released this illegal Omar Garcia or whatever, set free from ICE custody in major judicial blow to Team Trump. The judge highlighted the attempts to send Garcia to Siberia, Uganda, as evidence of, of an effort that appeared punitive rather than lawful. So they're saying, hey, it's punitive rather than lawful. In other words, you just kind of had it out for this guy. Well, the same thing could come back and talk about the judge when it comes to the Tina Peters case, if we want to be honest with it. And so Trump needs to follow these court cases, or somebody on his team, and start to kind of double down and go, hey, man, I don't really accept what's being said, but that's what the judge says. Well, how do we say that's not true for Tina Peters? The judge literally, after she was sentenced and everything else, just attacked her. And what would the judge be doing that for if there wasn't kind of a bender against Tina in the first place, Doctor?
Well, it seems to me like there's a case that could be made. And it's interesting to me also that was part of the reason that we had the American Revolution to begin with is that justice was not being served. The court system was corrupted, and the Americans finally got fed up with it. And we've talked a lot about this idea of being able to have a stable, predictable setting that you can make decisions in, start families. If you've got justice in the court system and you're avoiding domestic violence because of that, if you've got an adequate defensive system for the nation, so you're avoiding invasions from bad guys, if you've got a monetary system that is not being manipulated, if your voting is good, all those kind of things are necessary to have this, general welfare occur that they talk about by the American founding fathers.
Roger that. Hang tight, ladies and gentlemen. We also want to talk about Donald put forth an executive order. I'm completely against it. We'll talk about it on Liberty Roundtable Live. Ladies and gentlemen, I really try not to criticize the President of the United States, but every time he does something clown-like, I have to kind of go, what on earth are you doing, Brother Donald? All right, and this is what I'm talking about. Headline says this: Donald signs executive order for a single national AI regulation standard, blocking states from enforcing their own. Dr. Bradley, I'm having a problem with this on a variety of fronts. Number one, I don't think Congress has any authority whatsoever in regulating, controlling AI as a centralized position. Number one. There's no constitutional authority for this whatsoever. Secondarily, even if we want to say that the government can be involved there, it would require congressional guidance, not just a presidential executive order. This is insane and will just be overturned by the next president, or all I'm telling you is disaster, Doctor. It sounds simple, sounds like Donald Trump's trying to get ahead of it, but I think he's going about it all wrong, sir.
Well, absolutely correct. I mean, the powers that are delegated are few and defined. And I don't know how many times I've read the Constitution, a bunch, and I cannot see any inference anywhere at any time in any place that virtually everything the government's doing right now has any authority. I mean,
and what they would say about AI is, well, AI wasn't around when the old farmers, they didn't have a clue about that kind of stuff. Sam, come on, this has to be a living, breathing document that deal with modern time realities, and I reject that notion. Number one, I agree they didn't know about AI, but AI is no different than any other technology of their day or anything else, okay? Just because new technology comes out or just because a gun gets greater capacity or greater range, or that doesn't mean all of a sudden the founding fathers are clueless and they didn't know, okay? We're talking about things that relate. Now, if you want to change the Constitution because you really believe it needs to deal with AI, fine. What do you got to do? 2/3 of the Congress, 3/4 of the states to get that kind of stuff done? Okay? All I'm telling you is, folks, you cannot just as president go, hey, I'm going to stop the states from doing anything they want to with AI, and I'm going to control it all. Where do you get authority to do that? That's my question.
Well, they don't have the authority. And what's really interesting is the fact that this Constitution is technology agnostic. It has to do with delegation of authority, limits and bounds, checking the government from overstepping and implementing a tyranny. And so they set it up to act within certain bounds and no further. Because if you get interpolating this, you can interpolate it right out of existence. And
you can interpolate yourself into anything else under the sun if you're not very careful too. What we need, in my opinion, is a private consortium, a private nonprofit, organizational group that could kind of set some standards, and then states and/or companies could adhere to those standards. We can do all this stuff in the private sector, Doctor, if we want to.
We could, and really, we're kind of two steps beyond, if you will. I mean, the general government, the federal government, the national government, whatever we want to call it, is way out of bounds on this thing. And if it's to be regulated, and I put quotes up, but you didn't see my air fingers go up. If it's to be regulated, it would be regulated at the state and local level. And they say, oh, no, this is something that crosses all boundaries and everything like that. Well, a lot of things cross boundaries.
Yeah,
But
like your insurance coverage and all that kind of stuff. But again, the general government has no authority to be involved there either. Both bills yesterday failed, just like I predicted. The Rand Paul bill never even saw the light of day. So it's a clown show from the get-go. And what we have is government bureaucrats trying to, take too much power is the problem. But Thomas Massey doing a great job trying to rein this in. Thomas Massey has a bill to withdraw the United States from NATO. You guys talked about that last night, right, Doctor?
we did indeed, and it's a bill that I haven't read yet because as of yesterday, when I was looking through some of these things, the text had not been posted yet. But if it's typical of most of the stuff that Massey does, it's like a page and a half long, probably.
Yeah, it's well done, probably.
Yes, and it basically says we're shutting this down. For those of your viewers that don't know, that this NATO thing is a declaration of war in accordance to the United Nations, and the NATO is simply a regional arrangement of the United Nations, a war-making arm, and it takes from the United States the authority to decide which wars it's going to enter into, according to Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11.
And let me stop you there just to say this. I appreciate Massey's bill. Sadly, I think it's necessary. But withdraw the United States from NATO. The United States should never be part of NATO. All NATO does is breach the sovereignty of the United States and violate the delegated responsibilities of Congress.
There's no question about that. It's not just with warfare, but it has to do with sovereign nations and supranational organizations that interfere in the internal affairs of a nation. And that's exactly what brought about World War I, all the entangling alliances for that. And it's exactly what got us into Korea. Truman says, this thing in North Korea and South Korea, man alive, we've got to be there because the United Nations says it. And so we go to war and tens of thousands of people die, millions of Koreans, and then we fight to a standstill. I mean, it's basically a complete wash. And none of it follows the constitutional authority. And we could prove to the cows come home, the intent of the founding fathers was that they were not going to allow any of these entangling alliances or supranational arrangements that would interfere with our ability to decide when and where we went to war, if we were going to go to war. Is the war just? Can we afford it? I mean, the Congress has got to get together. It's the most onerous thing a nation does is go to war, and this NATO thing, it went into effect in April of 1949, and it's what really caused the Ukraine war. There's so many things wrong with it. We're going to get sucked into a war if Poland or somebody decides to shoot down a Soviet aircraft and everybody starts throwing punches. We'll be in a war because it says any member of NATO that gets in a scrape, we're all in the scrape, and we respond militarily. And I could look it up quickly and read you what Article 5 says, but we're bound and legally liable to go to war if one member of the NATO gets in war. It's a foolish, stupid,
and we should never, ever, ever agree to that kind of thing. And the problem is Congress doesn't even have authority to turn that over to a foreign entity, whatever that be, whether it be NATO, whether it be the World Economic Forum, whether it be, the International World Courts or bankers or anybody else. There's no authority to do that. In fact, they'll say, well, we did it by a treaty or we did it by this and that. You would say, well, hey, that supersedes the Constitution. That's a lie. The only thing that can supersede the Constitution is treaties that are constitutionally justifiable. In other words, you've got to follow the Constitution even when you put treaties together, Doctor.
Well, absolutely. A treaty is not any way, shape, or form have the ability to supersede the Constitution. There's a 1957 Supreme Court case, Reed v. Covert, in which the Supreme Court overruled itself. It initially ruled that treaties could overrule the Constitution. And then it went, wait. And it went to the people that had brought it and said, bring that back again. We want to talk to you again about that. And they overturned themselves. And they said,
a disgrace, ladies and gentlemen, and they should jealously hold on to their power, but they don't. Congress is literally doing nothing is the problem. Moving right along to Thomas Massey's second effort, Thomas Massey in the House and Senator Mike Lee in the Senate put companion bills to get us out of the Federal Reserve. Yeah, they introduced legislation to abolish the Federal Reserve. The bill's titled the Federal Reserve Board Abolition Act. Because remember, there's weird nuance. This is kind of a weird quasi-private but yet government thing. So they control the board, not necessarily the Federal Reserve. So they want to get rid of the board. The bill, known in its, 2025, 2026 iteration or incarnation, it's H.R. 1846 in the House. And I guess the companion bill in the Senate is S 869. 869, ladies and gentlemen. The legislation also would repeal the 1913 Federal Reserve Act that originally, and I would say unconstitutionally, created the system, Doctor.
Well, this bill was brought forth by both Massey and Lee in March. And it's just recently had another, shall we say, co-sponsor join it in the House. And so it's got a little bit of press lately. I think Massey's bill in the House, there's 11 co-sponsors, I'm pretty sure. Lee doesn't have any. I mean, here we have...
Yeah, where's Rand Paul? I mean, I don't understand that.
Well, I don't know either. I mean, here it is, March. It was brought out. It's months ago. And it still hasn't grown any legs. They've been kind of shelved in a committee and everything like that. It's a couple of these bills are really good bills. By the way, this one, the text is out. It's a very brief bill, and it has a very cogent manner in which it shuts down the Board of Governors and the Federal Reserve Act and pays off the people that have got jobs there. I mean, it's thought of things pretty well, and then it goes away, poof, gone. And the thing that's interesting is we've had two other national banks before, so to speak, two other Federal Reserves. Sounds like we've got to take a break here, Sam. I don't
yeah, there were two former attempts to try to steal our honest money supply and pervert it into a fiat failure. But nevertheless, both bills, by the way, are currently the referred committee stage, which means nothing has been done on them. No markups, no floor votes, no committee review, nothing. They've just sat there and rotted. Sad but true. When you think the Republicans want to restore the Republic, hey, Donald, hey, Congress, the way to do it is to jettison dishonest money, okay? Return to the constitutional currency that created the greatest economic engine the world's ever known. Would you please? All right, freedomsrisingsun.com, Dr. Scott Bradley, and yours truly continue in seconds. You're watching Liberty Roundtable Live.
Okay, before the break, we were introducing some of the topics that seem to be on people's minds with the Scott Bradley question and answer webinar last night. And we're just kind of shuffling through them because there's a lot of back deep stories to most of these things. But the next one that came up had to do with the smoking guns that are starting to really, basically demonstrate their activity with Venezuela. I mean, we are fast approaching a war with Venezuela. It's an absolutely, completely asinine. It's impossible. It's an enigma to be able to say why that's happening. And perhaps it goes back to when Bolton and Trump in his first administration got heartburn about Venezuela. They wanted to do a regime change through a coup. It didn't happen. For some reason, he can't let go of it. I mean, here we have a country that's, they're saying, they're shipping fentanyl. Nothing's from fentanyl's coming there. That's coming through Mexico from China. Well, it must be cocaine. Well, no, that's Colombia, guys. Oh, and by the way, we just, Trump did. He just pardoned the former Honduran president for shipping 400 tons of cocaine into the United States. That's probably got a $2 trillion, street value. I mean, this is a huge number of things. We pardon him. And for some reason, Trump is just bent on regime change in Venezuela. He's blowing up fishing boats that are, we don't know what they are. Kill them all, they say. And it violates the Uniform Code of Military Justice, the rules of war, the Geneva Conventions. I mean, if somebody's ship has been blown up, they're floating in the water, hanging on to the debris, You don't go in and on a second strike kill them all. I mean, these kinds of things are war crimes. And the Republicans that have had the brief interlude with the administration on this thing are coming away, yes, sir, 3 bags full. I mean, since when does a half a dozen senators or congressmen send the nation, give with a wink and a nod to the president what they're doing? Then we send a couple of jets over the Gulf of Venezuela, their airspace. They tootle around in their airspace for a half an hour, whatever. I think they're just sitting there hoping somebody touches something off, some crazy whacked off guy does a pot shot at them, and suddenly, hey, we were defending ourselves, just like Israel does. Every time something happens, they suddenly are in mass hysteria about going to war. I mean, those jets were there as bait. I mean, this thing, we take a oil tanker. Oh, it was a sanctioned oil tanker. This is what the Brits were doing that precipitated the War of 1812.
Well, and we show no evidence is the problem.
That's
Doctor,
right.
I don't have any evidence about these oil tankers being, you can say, well, Sam, that's where they put the money and that's where they do this and they do that and they do. All I'm telling you is, again, now we're fearing blowback. Even the military folks are now saying we're going to have blowback for doing all this. They're admitting the CIA principle that was documented, and then Ron Paul talked about it on the campaign stage back in the day, 20 years ago or whatever. Everybody mocked him, but now even the CIA is blatantly admitting the same point he made.
Well, and Trump's talking about we're going to have ground action. I can't talk about it right now, but it's shortly to come. And it's like, okay, so when are we in war and when aren't we in war? They don't have anything that says a authorization for military force. They don't have anything except maybe a wink and a nod from some very selected individuals in the House or the Senate that have the Constitution doesn't say, oh yeah, if you got a half a dozen guys that agree with you, go to war. That isn't what it reads. Congress shall have power to declare war. There is no declaration of war. All the rules of engagement, everything that's happening is extra constitutional. And this extrajudicial murder that's going on, war is mass murder, institutionalized and legalized. And none of that has occurred. And and Americans, it's like, oh yeah, we got in this little quagmire called Vietnam. And it was, dang it. We kind of just got stuck in the mud over there and we lost 58,000 Americans, millions of Vietnamese. I don't know how many a war in Venezuela will take, but it's absurd that we're doing any of it. And nobody seems to, that's in any position to make any noise about it, is willing to make the noise about it. I just don't get it. It's insane. The peace president. Come on. So,
well, a headline from the U.S. Sun basically says this: we must prepare for scale of war that our grandparents endured, NATO chief says. The time to act is now. Patrick Harrington with the piece, I want to give them credit for this. But this is kind of the concern we're talking about, right, Doctor? They're literally preparing for war.
Well, we've probably got 15% or thereabouts of the entire United States Navy, motorboating around just off the coast of Venezuela. Like I say, we've been over their Gulf of Venezuela. I mean, if we've got a $50 million bounty on the head of Maduro, what would people say if somebody out there, some whacked out tin horn dictator, put a bounty on Donald Trump's head? I mean, that would be pretty big stuff, but we go around putting these things out. It's a regime change move, but for the life of me, I cannot understand other than personal animosity. And boy, I wish there was time. I mean, we're running so far behind the clock, I'm sure, but to read what some of the founders talked about, how this, the ruler, the sovereigns, heartburn over these things are not worth bringing the people into the pain of it. We have no open, it's just not transparent. And
there's no doubt about it. So, ladies and gentlemen, look, the bottom line with this thing is this. Hey, we're advancing war with Venezuela. We're pushing for war. Hopes for an end of the Ukraine war are dashed again. Okay? We're looking at a situation, Doctor, as far as I can tell, where I mean, we are opening up so many fronts on this kind of war mentality. Trump talked about saying we're going to go in and take out the cartels in Mexico. I'm just telling you, we're pushing for war on every front. One of these, if we're not very careful, is going to tip into the abyss. In other words, move us further than I want to go. That's for sure.
Well, anything we're doing, I mean, these low-grade fevers that are running all over the nations of the world, it's a complete, we're imposing our will one way or another upon sovereign nations across the world. And, we want to overthrow this regime, or we want to tip the scales on behalf of that regime. And our military industrial complex gets tweaked for more profit. It's interesting. And at some point, maybe we'll talk about the National Defense Authorization Act that came in, but how the big military industrial complex is the big winner on that thing, and how that is laden with armaments that are being shipped to the. I mean, it wasn't that long ago Syria was being taken over by the Al Qaeda type, ISIS guys. Now they've got their lead guy in that thing, and now we're sending them money. I mean, the billions of dollars that are being shipped off in armament. I mean, it's not just in the Defense Authorization Act. I mean, from the days of Jimmy Carter, go back into those days and look at the deal he cut with Egypt and Israel for billions of dollars each every year. We paid it every year out of the State Department budget for their agreement to the Camp David Accords. I mean, every time we look around, there's some fostering violence, bloodshed, death, and destruction. And America is at the center of it every time we do anything. And I mean, I don't know if you want to talk about the Ukraine thing that's going on in the last several days. If you've been tracking that, it just unraveled again. But for the days before that, there was a Rubio meeting with them and saying, "Yeah, this is really hopeful. We think we're onto something. We're going to be able to pull off this thing." The real thing is unequivocally state Ukraine will never come into the NATO, and you've overcome about 80% of the problem. And that's basically what Putin was trying to prevent from happening anyway. And Ukraine says, no, we're not coming in. We're not going to stop this war until we get a guaranteed position by NATO. And Sam, remember?
Well, all you got to do is shut down NATO, then no one needs a position in it. Then all you got to do is stay away from it and let Russia and the Ukraine work that out. We propped up too many people for too long and picked sides in a never-ending failure. And it's time to kind of wake up and, some say, smell the coffee. I don't drink coffee, so wake up and smell the roses, or whatever you want to say. We need the truth on this thing. And when you literally have NATO chief, NATO must prepare for scale of war that our grandparents faced, warns NATO chief Mark, and how do you say it, Root or Rut?
Let me just
Rutte. Anyway,
just comment about that very briefly. Everybody's beating the war drums, and they're saying,
not me, baby.
Yeah, I know that, but
I'm beating the stop it drums.
State, England, if you've got Britain and you've got France and Germany, they're all in favor of the Ukraine war.
I know it.
Attack in the next 5 years, it's asinine.
And so is Donald, because he says he's not. He says he wants to have peace, but he's basically arming people as people attack one another as we try to hold these peace talks. It doesn't work that way, ladies and gentlemen. Hang tight. You're watching Liberty Roundtable Live.
We're trying to run the table a little bit, and I think that you guys got to do some deep dives in this yourself to find out how you should be so offended. But the United States Constitution, Article 1, Section 2, the final clause of that section, says the House of Representatives shall choose their Speaker and other officers and shall have the sole power of impeachment. And so impeachment power, the origin of that is with the House of Representatives. And of course, after they get their numbers together and get it passed, it goes over to the Senate for trial. But this week, if you can believe this, House of Representatives Stevens, what's her name anyway? It's Haley Stevens, has filed articles of impeachment to have Health and Human Services Secretary RFK Jr. removed from office. Now, she's the Lone Ranger on this thing. She's the only one that's filing for this. And if you go back and look at her history of how she worshiped at the feet of Fauci, and he was the science and everything, her charge against Kennedy is that he has abandoned science. And he's trying to put gold standard science back in, where they do these uh, double blind, placebo verified kinds of studies and do, the verify the safety and efficacy and everything else like that. All the stuff that didn't happen with the COVID jab. She was front and center on that and bringing forth the $2 trillion freebies that came out of that. All of those kinds of things. And now she's trying to say, RFK Jr. has abandoned science and we need to remove him from office. Now, the chances of this growing legs and going forward is slim and none. I mean, it's a Republican House. There may be some whacked out other Republicans that go along with her. But getting it 2/3 of the House is going to be a pretty steep climb. And then it goes to the Senate, and I don't think the Senate would give it the time of day. So it's not going to happen, but it is so appalling to me to see when you have true impeachable offenses that are going on, like taking the nation to war without following the Constitution. That's a pretty big deal. But no, he's abandoning science when he's trying to do the whole scientific process on everything they do. And she's there saying he needs to be removed from office. So it just never ceases to amaze me what kind of whacked out analysis we get.
You're right about that. It just goes to show that the Democrats are willing to take action. The Republicans don't take any action. They just simply look. Speaking of running the table here, they've ran the congressional table all year long. It was supposed to be the greatest Congress we've ever known under Trump. You got the House, the Senate, the White House, the courts, and they've literally spent half their time sitting at home. They've done nothing when it comes to all this out of control war action stuff. Hey, they're clearly constitutionally delegated responsibility is to deal with these issues of market reprisal, these boats on the seas, these oil tankers and everything else. They've done nothing. Now they're getting ready to go home for the Christmas break. I mean, these people are absolute disaster. And, in President Trump's defense, I know a lot of what he's doing I don't like and I don't agree with and I think is unconstitutional. But in an environment like he's got where otherwise nothing happens, at least he's trying. And I'm not saying that he's going about it right or anything else, but I'm just saying, hey, in modern times, at least he's trying to do something. Anyway, impeachment articles ought to be filed against a lot of people. And most of them, in my mind, are these judges that are just absolutely manipulative, like keeping Tina Peters in prison, literally manipulating that case till the cows come home, not letting her have a modicum of due process. It's a disaster, to say the least. But we got to get to the National Defense Authorization Act. They should have never passed that sucker either, Doctor.
Well, I think it was Wednesday night when the Congress did pass it. It was I don't remember the exact count, but it was like 2/3 basically were in favor of it. I think there were 94 Democrats and 18 Republicans stick in my mind as voting against it. So it was overwhelming.
Well, I would have been with them, Doctor.
Well, I think for good reason normally too. And if you do now, it's over $900 billion. People are having trouble.
It's over 900 pages too, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know the page count, but the fact of the matter is that what we have is Americans here at home are having to decide whether they buy Christmas presents or gas or maybe keep the heat on in the house. But the fact is, this is just chock full with millions and millions of dollars of military aid to countries like Lebanon, to countries like Syria. It's led by the guy that was leading the Al Qaeda type group, the ISIS movements. We're sending millions of dollars to these guys, and Israel is getting more 2,000-pound bombs than you can shake a stick at. I mean, they've bombed Gaza back to the Stone Age, and we're shipping them more 2,000-pound bombs. This kind of nonsense, the United States Congress has the authority to fund the defense of the nation. But what they're doing is they're shipping all over the world and basically building acrimony for everybody else who possibly can. It is a travesty. It's going to go to the Senate. I'm confident it'll pass with some tweaking that'll happen in the Senate because they can amend. But this National Defense
Oh, I'm
Authorization.
sorry, I made a mistake. It's 3,000 pages long.
Sorry. Oh, is it? Okay, I didn't know I did not get a chance to read it. I have had some smatterings of readings within it, but I haven't.
Yeah, which means these clowns didn't read it either.
Yeah. If I haven't read it, they probably haven't either, because I'm kind of a geek that way.
Well, how do you read it when it was released and manipulated and marked up and changed and voted on so quickly? It's not even possible to read.
Well, it's one of those must-pass bills, and so they stuff stuff in there that they find out about it later, and it's like, wait, no, who did this? And you find stuff in there, between the lines that basically it further entrenches the deep state. The military-industrial complex is probably one of the largest lobbies that's getting their way with Congress. I mean, whether it's the military side, or whether it's the pharma side, or whether it's the the agricultural group, or whether it's the educational people, or whether it's Israel. Those are probably the top lobby groups that spend money on our Congress critters, and they get their way all the time. And we, the people, we're worried about whether we're going to buy eggs or bacon. You can't have both. You can have one or the other. And they're shipping our money overseas faster than you can shake a stick at. It's a travesty.
So this is where the House virtually does nothing all year long. At the end of the year, at Christmas time, while y'all are spending time singing Christmas carols and finding ways to give nice presents to people, and throwing out the nice behavior that Christmas engenders, which I think is a blessing, House overwhelmingly passes 300-page, $900 billion annual defense bill. So think about that, folks. I don't even know how to respond to those numbers. $900 billion? Almost $1 trillion for what, war? It isn't for peace. Annual defense bill. Why do they call it a defense bill? Because as far as I can tell, most of that money is spent on offense, isn't it, Doctor?
Well, generally speaking, it is, but you need to go back and read what Article 1, Section 8 says about it. We're running out of time quickly. But basically, they do have a responsibility to provide for the national defense, raise and support armies, maintain the Navy, and all those kinds of things. But what we're having happen right now is it's a goodie bag, a grab bag for everybody and anybody. They're peddling U.S. hardware into NATO so they can share it to build their military forces or to give it to Ukraine. But the military-industrial complex is always being fed mightily by the hand of Congress, and we, the people, seem to kind of say, well, we're supporting the troops. How about supporting them not having to go die on some other battlefield that they were never justly being called to?
Well, and as you know, they're moving towards conscription. They're moving towards all kinds of ways to ensure that we're in war up to our eyeballs. $900 billion. Now, Trump even said that it could have been done easily and better for $500 billion back in the day. And, so I don't know if the Senate's going to pass this or, Trump's going to sign it or whatever else. But I'd like to see that sucker dead on arrival and give Congress a little bit of or at least the House, a little bit of a comeuppance on this thing. It is disaster, ladies and gentlemen. And who knows even what's in the thing? 3,000 pages. No one's read it. In its entirety or whatever, and you just look at this and go, man, I don't know what they're doing, but it's disaster. And I personally think every Congress critter that voted for this should lose the next election, Doctor.
Well, and it's interesting. I didn't look at all the Democrats that voted against it because it was like 93 or 94. But I think
good for them, though.
Yeah, but there was 18 Republicans, I think, and they were kind of the usual suspects. People that you would have said, oh, yeah, I would have expected that out of them. But the problem is they've been declared traitors by Trump. I mean, most of them, they're being primaried, they're being opposed, they're being asked to resign. And
Amen. All right, we're flat out of time this hour, ladies and gentlemen, but I'll tell you this, though. If you go to freedomsrisingsun.com, you can sign up and get your invite to the incredible weekly Q&As, the webinars, the constitutional discussions from Dr. Scott Bradley. We cover them on the broadcast, but you can dig in deeper if you follow Freedom's Call on Rumble, and look for it everywhere, ladies and gentlemen. Great stuff. I'm Sam Bushman. LovingLiberty.net is our syndicator. We're grateful for them and their support and all the stations up and down the line, TV, radio, platforms everywhere. You're watching and listening to Liberty Roundtable Live. Thanks for being alongside for the ride. God save the Republic of the United States of America.